What's going on, y'all? Webby Webb here, talking of sports in conjunction with the Ball Sports Network. I got my guy Jeff Lightsy here.
Yes,
It's been a
sir.
while,
It's
but it's
been a
doing
while,
calm, social distancing through
Yeah,
Zoom. It's this new era, man.
yeah, man. It's what it's all about. But thankfully for technology, we can still make things happen, dog.
Yeah, let's just get let's get right into it, man. We know there's a lot of things going on, a lot of changes that are going to be happening within sports. We got the NBA starting back on July 30th, the NFL reporting to training camp on July 28th. Let's just go ahead and then we got college football still in there. We're going to talk a little bit about all of that, but I think the biggest thing is we must get into the NBA because that'll be here before you know it necessarily. So, Jeff, we know they're going to be in Orlando and they're going to attempt to start this so-called bubble. Like, what's your thoughts about that, man?
It's just so crazy because the NBA will be the first major sport back, right? And so having all the guys down in the bubble, we've seen the complaints, whether it's about the food, about the conditions, the snitch line, of not wearing masks. Like, it's just so much going on happening on that worldwide of sports campus down in Orlando, Florida. And so I'm just really excited to see, the games again. I mean, I know it's going to be tough to finish the season, but I am definitely excited to see the Lakers, the Clippers, the Bucks, and all the teams play back on the court. I mean, it's just so crazy because so many things that are coming out of the bubble, whether it's guys having to quarantine for stepping outside their hotel, or guys getting injured like Rondo, or guys opting not to play like the half the Brooklyn Nets roster. So so many headlines, so many topics that's gonna basically make up who becomes the champion, and that's what is so crazy to see, and going to be super interesting to see who was able to overcome all of those obstacles that's happening down in Orlando in the bubble to be crowned champion.
Yeah, and I definitely agree with you. I just feel like I just hope it doesn't come to a point where all these players start testing positive and then they have to shut it down. So obviously they say this bubble is going to be unique and like they're going to keep everybody in. I know that Taylor Rooks, the media reporter and for Bleacher Report, she tested, they had a good test and they wanted her to quarantine for 7 days and different things like that. So there are a lot of different things surrounding inside that bubble that are going on that just makes things even more interesting. Like they're building the barbershop for the guys inside the bubble. So I'm just excited to see how this all plays out because like we're in new times and we're trying to see who's going to be ready. And obviously I think you and I both know which teams are going to be ready. I mean, we've seen LeBron. He said anybody that steps in front of him, he's knocking their head off pretty much. So, I mean, I'm just really kind of interested to see if it's still going to be that same type of that animosity or that same type of bad blood between Lakers, Clippers. What do you feel like that's still going to be there, or do you feel like it's just going to be like, man, let's just give it to the Lakers?
No, it's not going to change because the thing about the personalities on the Clippers particularly is they don't really care about anything but basketball. Guys like Patrick Beverly and Kawhi Leonard are not friendly guys. Like, they're not guys that's going to have drink. Like LeBron, he's like a friendly dude. He wants to go out, hang out with everybody, go work out with everybody. Patrick Beverly, Kawhi Leonard, they're not like that. So those are guys that's going to lead the Clippers in the battle on some, like, man, we still out here for a job. Like, we're out here to win the championship. We're not out here to be friends, kumbaya. We're not just giving up anything. We want to come down to Orlando, whether you believe this season is going to have an asterisk or not, because of the way we had to take a 4-month break, a pause in between, and guys are going to test positive, and guys are going to have to quarantine, and guys are going to opt out, all this different stuff. Like, whether you believe it deserves an asterisk because of that or not, the Clippers are still coming to try to win the championship. LeBron and AD and the Lakers are still going to try to win the NBA championship. So it's definitely, once the games begin, if we can get to the games and get the games to start, I think that's when we're going to see the level of intensity go back up because guys are back on the court and guys are still trying to win a championship. And that's what we're going to see once the teams start playing.
And it's one of those things where if you look at it, like guys had these times off and a lot of guys, they started spending time with family. But then there's some guys that they have the luxury of having those built-in courts at their house or being able to go to a gym that's probably owned by their buddy or something and still get those reps. So that's what I'm really eager to see is to see what type of, who was Yeah.
Who took the break serious. And that is a real thing, because having 4 months off the game is going to wear on some guys. Like, there were some guys that didn't put in work over the months during quarantine, during when the NBA was shut down. And then there were some guys that was putting in extra work. We saw Zion Williamson come back. He's in crazy shape. James Harden looked like he lost some weight. Nikola Jokic has lost some weight. So those kind of things are going to go into effect when everybody gets in the bubble and then everybody starts playing against each other once the games get going again.
So we're going to pretty much have to see. We have a couple weeks until the official start, so we're going to keep you updated on different reports that we find interesting, and there's going to be some more topics I know leading to that. Before we get off the NBA, what is a team you're looking forward to in this bubble?
I honestly, man, am looking forward. I mean, we obviously know about the big names, the Clippers, the Lakers, the Bucks. Like, those are the teams to beat. Those are the teams everybody's expecting to fight for the championship. But one team that's going to be interesting to watch is the Houston Rockets. The fact that the Houston Rockets have James Harden, who's historically one of the greatest scorers of the basketball we've ever seen in the NBA. Whether you think he shoots a lot, you don't like his playing style, whatever, the man gets buckets, right? He gets buckets. And normally, a lot of people fault him. They say he gets tired when the playoffs come because his usage rate is so high, right? Like, he dribble, pass, dribble, shoot, dribble, get fouled, right? But the fact that he had a 4-month break in between the last game that they played in March and essentially the start of the playoffs. So there should be no excuse about being tired. And if he is able to take his regular season numbers and elevate them in the playoffs, like the greats, Michael Jordan, LeBron James, Kawhi Leonard, Kobe Bryant, all of their numbers are always elevated in the playoffs. James Harden's numbers always decline in the playoffs because they think he's always tired. So the fact that you had this break, there should be no excuse about being tired. And if he can elevate his game in the playoffs, the Rockets will be a team that's pretty scary. That's just what I think.
Yeah, and you go out west. I'm going to go out east. I believe a team to kind of keep an eye out on is as crazy it may seem. I believe that I just really think that the Raptors, I believe the Raptors are a team, you just can't, despite what's going on, I just feel like they're a team that, keep an eye out on. Not nothing major, but, just got to keep an eye out on the Raptors,
Hey, they are the defending champs, man, so it's not a bad pick.
Yeah, so NBA is good and all, but, NFL, there's a lot of talk going on around NFL. And as we know, is lately the hashtag "We Want to Play" has been really trending as far as like the players in the NFL. Drew Brees took to Twitter. Russell Wilson, like a lot of players, like they've went and expressed that there's really no set in stone plan on like how their safety is going to be taken into hands with the NFL. Like, they want these players to come to training camps, but there's no set in stone. Like, so what are your thoughts about what's going on in the NFL?
So the NFL is very tricky, but any sport to reopen during a pandemic is going to be hard, right? Whether it's the NFL, the NBA, whatever. Only sports like golf that you can really socially distance, or even baseball, you can really socially distance and not have too much trouble with that. But with the NFL, it's a lot different because there's so many more guys. We're talking about rosters of 53 men, 20 assistant coaches, a bunch of scouts, everybody that are in these facilities or on the sideline or in the building during the normal operations. And so with having so many people, that in itself is hard. And then you got to talk about how can you socially distance when the object of the game is to put somebody on the ground, right? Like, it's to other men, right? Like, so that is part of the game. And so the NFL is it's going to be tough, man. Like, the NBA was able to essentially create this bubble and only allow so many personnel inside the bubble and test everybody and put monitors on everyone and set up a snitch line with all of that stuff.
Right.
You can't do that in the NFL. Like, you can't do that in football. And so it's so, and in the NBA, obviously you have touching and contact and stuff like that, but it can be limited somewhat. Whereas the NFL, that's the whole purpose of the game. 5 linemen on each side come together. You're supposed to tackle the running back, tackle the receivers, so it's going to be tough, man. Like, and I think what I think is going to happen, because they're going to play the season. Like, they're not going to miss out. The NFL is multi-billion-dollar business. They're not missing out on the season. I don't think they're going to have players probably sign waivers. You know what I mean? Like, or do the best they can to try to prevent COVID. But we're going to see a lot of COVID cases once football comes back. And because it's tough. We saw a bunch in the NBA, but we're going to see, I think, way more in the NFL. And the way is some of these, there's a lot of NFL teams. There's teams in Florida where it's basically the epicenter of the pandemic right now. There's teams in California, which has got high numbers. There's multiple teams in Texas, which got really high numbers. So we're going to see a lot of COVID cases between NFL players if they decide to go ahead and play the season, which I think they will.
And I think the biggest thing with the NFL is that they're kind of late to the party. And the reason why I say late to the party is the NBA, like, they were mid-form. Like, they were getting calls like the game was literally about to happen when they were like, hey, we got to cancel this. When they realized, the first positive case happened, they were like, all right, well, we have to be able to move quick. And Adam Silver, he really did well with that. I must say, he really did. Now, the thing about the NFL is I personally feel like they're kind of like, all right, well, now we have to kind of adjust and see, well, we have no type of structure. Like, we are having these guys report, and then you have the players coming out and saying that there's no plan in place. That just lets you know that, like, they're still trying to figure stuff out.
Yeah.
And when you try to figure stuff out, that doesn't pretty much end well, So I really think that the NFL, in my opinion, is kind of like them cutting some preseason games. That's just the start. And as different players are starting to say, like, there's more changes to be made. I personally think there will be a season, but I think it's going to be a different format. Honestly, we might even see a shortage of games, The good thing about the NBA was that the NBA was already – they were playing most seasons, so they were getting ready for the playoffs. Yeah. But the NFL, it's like, we got to realize how to do the whole season plus playoffs, et cetera,
It's going to be so tough because the things that you suggest are smart, right? Like cutting games and doing this. But you got to think this is a business. There's payments and cash in hand already for those games before they were ever played, right? Like, there's advertising dollars and commercials and marketing and all these things. Those payments have already been made, right? Like, so if I'm a marketer, if I'm an advertiser and I have all these, advertisements that are supposed to happen week 15 and you're talking about you only want to play 14 games, well, I want my money back, but that money's already spent. You know what I mean? Like, that money's already paid for. So shortage of games ain't in the collective bargaining. It ain't in the eyes of the marketers. It ain't in the eyes of the team owners. They don't want to have no shortage of games because the shortage of games means the shortage of money I'm going to get, But obviously they're going to lose a lot of money because fans, if you're allowed, as some teams like the Eagles have already chosen, they're not going to have any fans in the stands.
Yeah.
And then teams like Baltimore Ravens and I'm sure there's others have already said we're going to cut our capacity, say if it's 70,000 down to 14 or 15. You know what I mean? So they're going to, like, the bottom line is going to be bad for every sports league. But when you're talking about cutting some games, nah, if they're going to play a season, they ain't cutting no games. I can tell you that for sure.
Like you already said, pretty much we're talking $1 billion, in the street. Multi-billion dollar. They not just about to say, all right, well, we're just going to social distance and we're just going to pull the name down quick. I really think that they have to, but they're working overnight. They're, as we speak right now, somebody is thinking of ways because they can't lose that moolah, man.
Nah, man, and it's so weird because even things as simple as like a locker room, like the guys are super close to each other. You know what I mean? Like, it's just, how do you socially distance in a locker room? How do you you don't socially distance at all in the field? Like, there's no way you can do that because either whether you're on the field actually participating or if you were a unit, whether it's offense or defense on the sideline, getting together, coming up with your game plan, looking at iPads and looking at Microsoft Touches, GoPros or whatever to look at the next, look at the, all the technology the NFL uses, looking at the formations and what's next and what kind of defense or offense we're going to run next time we're on the field. Like, you can't socially distance when you do that kind of stuff. So it's going to be like super crazy. I don't know what they're going to do, man. And I think they're just going to have a crazy number of COVID cases. I just hope that they're able to play, if they're able to play, to be able to finish. I wouldn't like how the NBA had to take a 4-month break. I don't really know if you can do that with football. Like, start and if they start and they have to take a break, I don't know if you can come back from football and just finish that season. Like, it's just gonna be like
it's gonna mess up. Yeah, it's gonna mess up the flow. And speak as we keep going on football and sports. We obviously know another big hoopla is college football season going to be played. We know high school football is still up in the air for some states and different things, but people worry about college football. And we know this is a big, big game changer if this season is not played. The SWAC, they canceled. A lot of conferences like the Big Ten, they're going to conference only as of right now.
Pac-12.
Big 12, like a lot of
Pac-12 already conference
so
only.
literally a lot of places, a lot of conferences are kind of making that mark like, okay, we're going to do this start now. But if I'm being real, my personal opinion, I don't think it's going to be played. I just think that it's going to be hard to control all those athletes on top of the academics, on top of doing different things, and keeping that virus is slow. NBA, NFL, it can happen. It can happen. But,
it's the fact that, it's the fact that they're amateurs, man. So, like, they're not getting paid, right? And it's going to be very hard for the NCAA to justify having kids on the field playing football when they don't have them back in school. You know what I mean? Like, if the colleges are shut down, it's going to be really hard to justify having a football season when the school is deeming it unsafe to be on campus, right? Like, I mean, it's going to be impossible dang there. And then what's going to even mess things up, you're talking about conferences playing conference-only games. How do I choose who's going to be in a playoff? You know, there's multiple teams. Yeah, there's multiple teams that's going to be, like, in contention that think would have a pretty impressive win if they beat said team at the beginning of the season. You know how they have these interconference games, like these big-time games at the beginning of the season. I think Ohio State or somebody was going to play Oregon. Auburn played, like, all these huge intercrossing games at the beginning of the season, but we're only going conference only. Well, how do I choose a playoff team? What if two teams don't play each other in conference, right? And I don't know, man. It's gonna be so crazy. I guess that's what the conference championship is for. But only have conference only games, man, it's gonna make things really super duper tough to choose a playoff. And obviously, most Power 5 conferences have created their conference championship game because they didn't always have them. But now everybody has a conference championship game. So I guess you take the champion of said conference, but nobody's going to have impressive wins if you're only playing conference games. I mean, think about who's in, like, think about, like, the Clemson in the ACC. I mean, I'm going to pick on my team's Louisville, but Clemson plays no one in the ACC. And then at least they get a game like South Carolina in a game that's non-conference that could be impressive. Or if I don't know who their schedule deemed. I don't think it was anybody for real at the beginning of the season this year. But they don't get any, like, even get to choose them to prove themselves against the South Carolina in the SEC. They get to run through the ACC, win that, and they're probably going to be in the Final Four, the playoff anyway. But still, like, this is not even a challenge. So it's just, man, it's going to be messy. But bringing athletes, having a football season when the kids aren't allowed to be on campus, NCAA going to have a hard time trying to prove that. And the spring football, yeah, that ain't going to work. That ain't going to work because the guys at Alabama that are first-round picks, they ain't playing football in the spring. They getting ready for the draft. You know what I mean? The guys at Clemson, they ain't playing Ohio State. I ain't playing football in the spring. Thinking I'm going to tear my ACL 2 months, 3 months before the draft? Yeah, nah, man. That ain't,
it's not happening, man. It's not happening, man. That's what I'm saying. Like, a lot of, even if you look at on college basketball too, like college basketball, a lot of these cats, man, they're not going to be able to feel the need to, man, I know I'm league ready. I know I can get an agent that gets me right. Really, I have an option just to go here. So it's not going to work out. It's really not going to work out. I believe that college sports will not be played. College football is not going to be played. That's just my bold take. But, you know, there's a lot of money to talk, so that money could.
A lot of money. You're right about that.
I mean, you just take this imagine. You and I both know what it's like to be at a college game, how it's like to cover a college game. You know, definitely you personally, like you definitely know, like, imagine not having those fans, imagine not having those tailgates. Like the college football, like the season, like even if they do just do conference only, you're really limited in your resource and your income, I believe, you know?
And the thing is, man, we see all of these cases, all these teams. There'll be 30 out of Clemson, 23 out of Ohio State, 6 at a school like WKU. You know what I mean? So many cases at these schools, and it's going to be so hard to keep kids in college. If your university brings the students back in the fall, keep your team away from everyone else. Like, I mean, they barely get the college experience already, but you mean to tell me they can't go to parties, or they can't go out to the bars, or they can't go, they got to stay in the rooms because they're football players or basketball players? It's impossible, man. They can't bring nobody to their house. because that's you having a chance of infecting yourself by doing that. So I just, man, it's gonna be impossible to manage, and because they're not professionals, they're not getting paid. I mean, you really can't stop them from doing what they want to do. So ain't no bubble in college football. Ain't no bubble in
ain't
football.
no
So
bubble.
it's gonna be
Yeah.
crazy to see what
Hey,
kind of plan they come up with.
the only bubble they got is literally from that dorm to that classroom. To literally, you don't know, and you have too much action going on the college campus. Like it's really impossible. Even if they decided to, okay, well, we're gonna invest this amount of money to have these athletes stay at a certain hotel. But like, let's be real. Like, are you willing to risk all that money for that? Because then you have to do all the sports like that. You got to do you got to do volleyball. You got to do a lot of all type of sports, man. So that's another case we're going to have to be able to keep our eye out on, you know. Sure. Yeah. Anything else you want to add, man? This was just kind of like the introduction, kind of giving people a taste because, you know, there's a lot of sports outlets and different podcasts to talk sports, but we want to give our real opinion. No, we're going to keep giving our real opinion, but anything else you want to add, Jeff?
Yeah, man. So I do want to ask you about the Washington. We talked about the NFL, but we didn't really dive on the Washington Redskins. There's a lot going on with the Redskins right now. So we got between the name change, you know, basically the Washington Football Club now. They're no longer the Redskins. They're getting rid of the nickname. What were your thoughts about them changing their name and looking to find a different name with the Washington Football Club?
Wow, man, literally that has been a big topic, you know, and I was really trying to get my good guy Terry McLaurin on here, you know, but I haven't heard back from him yet. But I believe, you know, it's due time. It's due time, you know. I mean, there's been talks about it before, but then it's kind of like the owner, he kind of brushed it off. But now with all the Black Lives Matter movements and all these other type of pressures coming on them, they're entitled to like, hey, it's time for them to make this change. You know, it's time to make this change, and it's time to be able to, hey, well, if FedEx said we got to make the change, we ain't got no choice. You know, so it needs to get done. So if FedEx says it needs to happen, now it needs to happen. So that's where I'm at with that, man.
That's the thing, man. When you start messing with people's pockets, they tend to change their opinion, right? Like, so the name Redskins has been a terrible name for the history of existence, right? Like, we don't have teams called the Washington Caucasians or the Washington Negroes, or, you know what I mean? Like, we don't do that. Like, it's awful. It's stupid. But the fact that Nike pulled all their stuff off their website, and FedEx said, we're pulling all our advertising dollars. And these are millions and millions of dollars in merchandise and in marketing and in advertising. So once that happened, Daniel Snyder's ears got the perk, and it's like, all right, man, like it's time to make some changes, man. So like, and the thing is, Daniel Snyder, for years, he has always said he was never going to change the name. And you know why he said that? Because nobody was threatening his money. Washington has been one of the worst ran franchises of the last 20 years. Like, they literally haven't been good at all for 20 years. And they make terrible decisions in personnel. They make terrible decisions in coaching and terrible decisions, obviously, as an organization. So to see that they finally changed their name is beautiful. I'm wondering what it's going to be. It's going to be interesting to see, like, an NFL team actually change its name like that. I mean, I don't think I can't remember the last time. I don't think I've been alive since that's happened. We've had the Oilers, you know, Houston Oilers became Tennessee Titans, and I can't think of any NFL teams. Like, obviously, we've had some teams in the NBA change their names, but the NFL, that's going to be like super crazy to see. Sticking with Washington, we saw that report come out, man, of all of those women. It looks like 15 women are saying basically, not Daniel Snyder, the owner, but people in his inner circle were a part of basically some sexual assault, sexual harassment things going on with Washington. What are your thoughts on that, man?
Washington is the only program that got caught right now. If you hear me, you know, I think that's one of those pieces of puzzles that can really allow other things to start opening up, you know. And as things start to, you know, more information starts to come around on that case, it's just one of those things where you just really got to see, like, dang, like, that's how y'all getting down there, but you just never know what other organization might be doing the same thing, which is really messed up because, you know, you're idolizing these women and you're doing these things to these women, definitely even women that are like trainers or whatever it may be, working in sports. That just goes back to say, like, we're still in time where we got perverts working in places that they don't need to be working. Period. Point blank.
It's
Yeah.
so crazy that this is happening in Washington because this is not the first time some abuse of power over women is taking place in Washington. And that's why Daniel Snyder needs to be ousted. I'm not a Daniel Snyder fan. He's the owner of the Washington Football Club. He doesn't need to be an owner, man. And even though he wasn't directly implicated in this, like say the guy from the Carolina Panthers was the owner of the Panthers, and he was forced to sell. Like once it came out, he was out here sexually assaulting women at work. Yeah. They forced him to sell his football team, or he kind of like just knew, okay, I need to get rid of this team. So even though Daniel Snyder wasn't directly implicated, this isn't the first case of the Redskins and sexual assault, man. I don't know if you know this story. There was a story that there was a boat cruise by a bunch of Washington Redskins cheerleaders, and they were forced to be on the boat topless to entertain the men on the boat. That is sick, and that is super sick, and the Redskins need to pay for having, like, it's not like this is the first time. Now, granted, you're right. This stuff ain't just happening in Washington. Like, women in sports are getting sexually assaulted and mistreated and abused in sports everywhere. But the fact that we have more than 15 women documented on this case, and we know about the cruise staying in previous years, that's sick, man. You shouldn't be allowed to keep your football team when you're running it like a circus. You're running it like a madhouse, and people shouldn't have to feel uncomfortable coming to work when they go work for Washington.
And like you made a tremendous point right there, because it's like, what is it going to take? What really is it going to take for these allegations to really hit stone? And people like, all right, nah, that's bullshit. Like, that's not going to happen. You know, like, we hear about it, we address it, we execute it, and that's what the NFL should be about. But we already know what the NFL's about. And
they're letting Washington investigate it themselves. Like, no, it should be an outsourced investigation taking place, issued by the NFL, right? But the NFL has had its own issues when it comes to domestic violence and sexual assault and things like that when it comes to women. The NFL doesn't really seem to have a grasp over those concepts, right? When women are involved, the NFL kind of doesn't want to be in, they kind of want to wipe their hands clean with it. Yeah, I mean, that dates back to when Ray Rice punched out his wife. You know, like they gave the man 2 games. They said they never saw the video. How does TMZ get the video before the NFL? But once again, or when Greg Hardy choked out his fiance or whatever, had her bleed, and they really respond quickly to that. You know, so the NFL's had its own issues with women, but this one needs to be taken care of. Something needs to happen. Now, a lot of those guys that were mentioned in the article, I don't know if you know, but they've either resigned or were fired. Like, a lot of them don't work for Washington anymore. But it's the simple fact that that actually took place, and there's 15 women willing to go on record and say this happened to me after we know about what happened on that cruise. That was documented as well. That doesn't need to take place anywhere, in any work environment, but especially not in the NFL when there's a bunch of men and a lot of women that work in sports, and they shouldn't have to feel uncomfortable.
And the thing about the NFL, man, because there's a couple more things I do want to talk about on the NFL that I believe that we can have some great content about. Is the first thing is the Lift Every Voice and Sing. You know, the Negro National Anthem.
Yeah.
This is going to be played week 1, if I'm not mistaken.
Yeah.
Is it only week 1, right?
From what I understand, yes.
So they're going to play the Negro National Anthem for week 1 of their season, right? And support, solidarity for Black Lives Matter and police brutality, all this stuff. But it's just like, when we look at that, man, like, my person, the opinion I think about it is like, all right, so you're gonna give us 1 week, right? It's 1 week, right? You're only gonna give us 1 week. It's pretty self-explanatory. I've seen people and I've heard different views. I mean, I know some players are kind of like, well, dang, we get 1 week, and it's just like, what's your purpose behind that?
Yeah, and that's the thing. See, for me, I don't even care about that, man. You ain't got to play the Negro National Anthem to me. Just treat us fairly. Like, just be on the side, be on the right side of history if you're the NFL. Don't be scared of big bad Donald Trump. Don't be scared of all these other people. Like, you need to speak out about the craziness and the injustices that are happening to Black and brown people across this country, and speak out against that. Right? Every individual owner, donate some money, put some money or put funds into the cause, put funds into the community. I don't really care about the Negro National Anthem being played at NFL games. Just
it's not doing
do
nothing.
some work. Yeah, do some work. Like, invest. Like Michael Jordan, as much flack as a lot of people give Michael Jordan, he's investing $100 million over the next 10 years into the community to help Black people. Right? I need owners team owners, people with the billions and billions of dollars to put money into the black community. That's what I care about. I don't give a
Yeah.
damn about no Negro national anthem and all that stuff. Like, you can keep it. I don't really care about that. Like, I want some actual change. Playing the Negro national anthem, but being scared of Donald Trump and what he's gonna say about your teams or say about people kneeling, that's what I care about. You know, Colin Kaepernick being blackballed from the league, that's what I care about. I don't care about the Negro national anthem, man. Like that really don't do nothing for me.
It's a big slap in the face, you know, and staying on the topic of, you know, being the change, right? You know, this past week, you know, Kenny Stills, wide receiver from the Houston Texans, like he was out in Louisville, your city, 502, you know, protesting for Breonna Taylor in front of Attorney General Cameron Daniels' house, you know. So it's one of those things where, you know, and he was arrested. He was arrested. Do you see this affecting his NFL career?
No. To me, Kenny Stills, and I made a video about this, he has been silently a hero, right? Kenny Stills is someone who's been constant in his giving back to the community and fighting for black people. Like, he has been a consistent figure since at least that I can see 2016. And that's right when Kaepernick started first taking a knee. Kenny Stills, who is not someone who is of super high stature, right? Like, he's not someone that's like you can't replace. He can be replaced. He's not Patrick Mahomes. You know what I mean? Patrick Mahomes takes a stance. Nobody's going to do anything because he's that good. Like, you're just going to try to look the other way or, you know, just deal with it. But Kenny Stills is someone who's actually risking his career, right? He's a fifth-round guy. He's a guy with not crazy numbers. He's really talented, but he's not Julio Jones or Patrick Mahomes or Michael Thomas. You know, he's not someone that's paid $20 million a year, and he is still willing to put his career on the line to be on the right side of history, to fight for justice. And that's why I see Kenny Stills as a hero, someone who's taken a knee. He could easily be blackballed. Like, he's not just not replaceable. Like, he can be replaced. He's taking a knee during the national anthem. He's fighting for the justice for Breonna Taylor here and even in Louisville. Like, he's making traveling. He's putting his money where his mouth is, and he's putting his time and his efforts where his mouth is. Like, and he's being a hero. And that's somebody that I definitely look up to, Kenny Stills, man, because he is literally sacrificing his career in the NFL to be on the right side of history and fight for justice.
Yeah, you know, he's, like you said, really not having a lot of numbers, being able to be that voice of the community, being able to say, hey, man, I don't care if I got 2 catches, but I'm going to be out there, you know, voicing for my people. And I believe in change, and change don't happen overnight, but change with consistency, being able to say, hey, I stand with this cause, and I'm going to stand with this cause regardless. And being out there with other celebrities, like, that might lead to other, you know, athletes possibly saying, like, hey, I'm going to go out there and be the change too, you know? Yeah. So,
yeah, man.
Yeah. So. And you got anything else, Jeff, man?
I'm all good, man. That's all I got for today, man.
For sure, man. Well, hey, y'all make sure y'all stay tuned, man. Jeff, where can they find you, man?
Man, find me at JLightsy7 on all platforms. Jeff Lightsy Jr. on YouTube. We're gonna keep it going, talking up sports, ball sports, and collaboration. It's gonna be great. We got some great things coming.
Yep. Hey, Jeff, close it out right there, man. Y'all stay tuned.